and I don't want to be inflammatory, but this is the dividing line between casual and non-casual.
I don't think there's ever been a scarier
Yeah, you know
combo.
here's the thing that I love about the Raiders franchise specifically. You can make a Raiders Mount Rushmore and pick no guys who handle the ball.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Football Elevated podcast. I am your host, Khaled Abdallah, and I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Mack Bryant. And today, we are talking all-time AFC West teams. So, a couple weeks ago, we started talking about brainstorming for our next topic, and we decided to talk about the all-time teams for each of the organizations in the AFC West. So, we're talking Chiefs, Raiders, Broncos, and Chargers. We're going to be taking turns introducing our all-time offenses and defenses for each team. And the fun thing is you can put it in any formation you want. Maybe you want to play a 4-3, maybe you want to play a 5-2, bear front, whatever you want to do to make the guys fit that you wanted. This is completely subjective, so we'll have different criteria, and I want to hear about your criteria as to what decided some of these tiebreakers for you. But for you specifically, what is it about this topic that got you fired up?
Well, anytime we get an opportunity to talk about the legends of the game, that's my jam right there. I love that. I love making the hard calls. I love setting criteria and saying this guy's better than this guy, and this is why I think that. So we could just have the debate. I love talking ball, as you know, as all of our folks know. So, and I like the challenge of it. Sometimes some of these position rooms are super deep and you've got to make a decision. And I love holding our feet to the fire and making that decision and then defending it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. One thing I noticed is that, depending on the organization, some of them are super deep, for example, defensive backfield,
Yes.
but at the offensive line, not so deep defensive line. So it's really fun to, especially as we go through the entire NFL, which we plan to eventually, we're going to get to see some trends. Like some teams are just, they have 100 great running backs, but they don't have any good offensive linemen or whatever. It's probably not going to work out that way or vice versa. But yeah. So we'll start off with the San Diego / LA. Well, I guess LA, then San Diego, then back to LA Chargers.
We're doing Chargers first.
I'm sorry. The Broncos. I'm sorry. We're starting with the Broncos.
First. Okay.
Sorry about that. And they've been, for the most part, in Denver. I think their entire existence in Denver, which is rare. That's the only team in the AFC West that has not moved several times. And actually, before we do this, I want to shout out James Patrick, my co-host on Wednesday. In our Tuesdays now, we do our live show. And we were just kind of reminiscing, especially him, about the AFL days. And he was talking about how the AFL guys don't get enough love.
They will today.
Immediately, I was like,
they will
exactly.
Today.
I was like, I got to plug this podcast, James. I got to plug it and be like, listen, man, on Thursday morning, we are going to be shouting out plenty of AFL guys, AFL All-Stars, all these AFL, Hall of Fame type guys. So just before we do that, I wanted to just give him a little shout out. Over to you. You're going to be introducing your Broncos offense. You can kind of reveal the formation as you go.
Okay.
And as you get through the offense, I'll let you go through each guy and I'll say, if I had him or not.
Okay.
So,
all right. Well, so this is my all-time Bronco offense. And right off the bat, to some fans, there's going to be some controversy because at quarterback, I'm going with John Elway. And John Elway is, I think many fans anyway, would agree that he is not the best quarterback to have ever worn the Bronco uniform, but he is certainly the best Bronco quarterback to have worn it. He did more in my opinion, he did more for the franchise. He produced more for the franchise than the other guy. That other guy, of course, is Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning, 3 Pro Bowls, 2 first-team All-Pros, an Offensive Player of the Year, an MVP. He was amazing for the Broncos. But Elway,
50 touchdowns, right?
50 plus. Yeah,
season?
He set the single season passing record in his MVP and Offensive Player of the Year season. I think he beat out Drew Brees by 1 yard. Again, Drew Brees finished the seconds. I think if I remember those numbers correctly, he's 54.77 was the yards that year, and it was 1 more yard than Brees did in the prior year. Elway obviously played his entire career for the Broncos. He was a 9-time Pro Bowler. He was an MVP. He was a 3-time All-Pro. Never first-team All-Pro, but 3-time All-Pro. He did more for the Broncos than Peyton did, so he is my quarterback. You can only play one.
Yeah, that's easy choice for me. waffled a tiny, tiny bit for Peyton, but I think the body of work, it's Elway all the way. Unfortunately, never a first team All Pro, but I guess that happens when you're playing against Dan Marino and Joe Montana.
They won a few.
And, exactly. All right, running backs. Who you got?
You know what? Let me go line first. So, offensive line,
please.
and compared to the rest of the division, the Denver offensive line is a little thin compared to some of the other teams in the division. I have at tackle Gary Zimmerman, who actually played, kind of split his career between the Vikings and the Broncos. But for the Broncos, 3-time Pro Bowler, 1-time first team All Pro, another second team All Pro. So 2 All Pros for the Broncos. He belongs there. On the other side, the other tackle is Ryan Clady. So 4 Pro Bowls, 2 All Pros, have him there. The guards is where it gets a little thin. So Keith Bishop and Mark Schlereth, 3 Pro Bowls between them. So not a murderer's row there at guard. And then Tom Nalen was an excellent center, 2-time first team All Pro at center. So those are my linemen, Clady and Zimmerman at the tackles, Bishop and Schlereth at the guards, and then Tom Nalen at the center.
So we varied a little bit. I went with Clady and Bishop and Nalen as well. I went with Luis Vasquez over Mark Schlereth just because of the first team All Pro. I know Schlereth is kind of like he's a Raider hater. I'm not a big fan of him. Every time I hear him on TV, I'm like, oh my God, this guy again. So I'm slightly biased. And then at right tackle, I went with Ken Lanier. I played there for about 11 years. No Super Bowls, but he did make it 3 times. And he was just, he stuck around for a long time. I feel like that matters during a strong era for the Broncos. So,
Sure.
This is where it gets fun because we're talking about formations and trying to make things work.
Yes,
so
and
you got?
This is going to be a theme for me. So I view the skill position. So running back, wide receiver, and tight end. There's 5 slots there. And I, in all of these teams, I mess around a little bit with the slots. So,
absolutely.
With Denver, it was tough because I went with 1 running back. They have 2 Hall of Fame running backs. I went with 1 running back, and that's Terrell Davis. Of course, 3-time first team All Pro, twice Offensive Player of the Year, MVP, 2,000-yard rusher. You can't not have him. Honorable mention for me, Floyd Little, because obviously he was amazing for the franchise, and he's also an All Pro, also a Hall of Famer, but he's not on my team. The 1 running back I have in the backfield is Terrell Davis. Okay.
Before you do the rest of the guys, I have a dirty confession to make. I'm a lifelong Raiders fan, but when I was, I think, 8 years old, I had a Terrell Davis jersey. He was my favorite player.
Well, and he's if you take the teams out of it, he's a great story too. He's a 6th round draft pick, made the team on special teams, basically. I mean, how do you not root for someone like that, even if he plays for the wrong team?
Yeah, when they switched over to the navy blue with the sharp orange stripes,
it's amazing.
Grade school me was like, oh man, I gotta have this.
And it's amazing. Side note, it's amazing how many teams get good if they get a good uniform and then all of a sudden they become good. That happens. Yeah, that happens more than you think. I went.
It's what is it? Dion said, "Look good, feel good, play good." So
there it is. Yeah. Now I went with 2 tight ends. So obviously you got to do Shannon Sharp. Shannon Sharp, Hall of Famer, 4-time first team All Pro. You have to have him. But the tight end that people don't talk about for the Broncos, who was amazing, his name is Riley Odom. He was also a 2-time first team All Pro, 3-time All Pro, 4-time Pro Bowler. And he played in that era where you couldn't just catch passes, you had to block too. And he was a complete tight end in that same era as some of the other great 70s tight ends. So 2 tight ends for me. And then the wideouts, I've got Rod Smith and I've got Demaryius Thomas. So 2 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, and a single running back in the skill positions for me for the Broncos.
Yeah, Demaryius Thomas may rest in peace. I went with 3 wide receivers and a tight end. Rod Smith, incredible story, drafted guy, becomes the best receiver in franchise history. And then I went with Lionel Taylor, who's kind of the old school version of Rod Smith. He was like the early GOAT for the Broncos receivers. Demaryius Thomas, of course, the more recent version of that. And then, of course, Shannon Sharp is like the no-brainer in this. Maybe the best tight end of all time. I don't know, top 3, top 5 easily.
It's interesting in this division. You've got several Mount Rushmore candidates at tight end in this division alone.
That's very true. Yeah, like we were talking about, there's just the distribution of all-time greats. Like you could go probably 4 or 5 teams that don't have a Hall of Fame tight end, and then there's like 6 of them in this
Yeah.
division alone.
You could build
Yeah, we'll get to the Raiders, and it was
the entire you could build a legit Mount Rushmore, NFL Mount Rushmore tight ends on this division alone. You could do it without having
Absolutely.
to pick a single tight end from a different division. That's how good the tight ends are in this division.
So I think we agreed for the most part. We had a slight formation
Mhm.
difference and, a couple swaps on the offensive line. For the defense, what did you go with?
Now the defense,
However you
again,
want to
I'm
start.
going to start on the defensive line, and off the edge for me, the biggest no-brainer was Von Miller. Have to have Von Miller. Now you could argue that he's a linebacker. I have him as an edge, so I've got 4 players across the line. Von Miller is one of them. 3-time first team, actually 7-time All-Pro, 3-time first team All-Pro. On the other side, I have Carl Mecklenburg, so he's my other edge. And then in the center, I've got Trevor Price, and I've got Reuben Carter. Excuse me. So not as decorated in the center, but the edges are phenomenal for this team.
Okay. I went with a
Okay.
3-4, so a little
Mhm.
bit different. So why don't you go
Okay.
through your front
All
7,
right.
and then
Well,
I'll go
okay.
with mine.
I'll throw another twist at you. So linebackers, I'm not playing a front 7. I'm playing a front 6 because I'm
Oh,
going nickel.
okay.
I'm going
Okay.
nickel
All
in the
right.
secondary. So 2 linebackers. I've got Al Wilson as one of my linebackers, and then Hall of Famer Randy Gradishar is the other. So Gradishar is a 2-time first team All Pro. Obviously, Hall of Fame late. I mean, he waited maybe 20 plus years to get in, but he's in. And honorable mention, I've got Tom Jackson, who was also an All Pro in that Orange Crush defense, but I don't have him on my team because I'm going with 5 defensive backs. So my
Okay.
my linebackers, Al Wilson, Randy Gradishar.
All right. I'll talk about my front
Okay.
7. So you know what? I like your out of the box thinking, because I could have went nickel, I could have went
Mm.
dime on some of these teams just to fit
Yes,
the guys
yes.
in. But I went with a 3-4 for my defense. So we'll go with defensive line. The end, I went with Lyle
Oh, yep.
Alzado. I know he's probably known more as a Raider, but he was an all-time Denver
Yes.
great, which is, you see some interesting, I don't know about incestuous is the words, but guys that played really well for Denver
Yes.
and the Raiders.
And they should have been on both
probably on
teams.
some of these teams. Yeah, exactly. It's weird. And then at nose tackle, I went with Trevor Price,
Okay.
who was a little more of a recent guy, but he was just an absolute monster, a really,
he was.
really great player that
Yes, he
I
was.
enjoyed watching. And then at the other end, I went with Tombstone Jackson.
Ooh.
Just a rich Tombstone Jackson, played there from 67 to 72, 3-time first team All Pro. One of the best nicknames, I
Yes,
think,
no
in
doubt.
NFL
No
history.
doubt. No doubt.
And then for my linebackers, again, I went with a 3-4. So I put Von
Right.
Miller, outside linebacker, edge, whatever you want to call it. I played Carl Mecklenburg at middle
Okay.
linebacker because he played all the positions, so you could kind of slot him wherever you needed him. Then Randy Gradishar and Tom Jackson.
Okay.
So
All right.
a little bit of overlap there for my front 7,
Yeah.
your front
Yes.
6.
Now, the secondary for me, there is a very specific reason that I did this. So Broncos, first of all, they are deep in the secondary. There's a lot of guys here, but I made an accommodation specifically for a guy, and I'll get to that. So safeties,
Please.
Steve Atwater, of course, Hall of Famer, the
No-brainer,
signature hit on Christian Okoye. That's his all-time highlight film hit right there, but also Dennis Smith as a safety. So those are my 2 safeties. Corner, also a no-brainer, Hall of Famer Champ Bailey. There's no conversation to be had there. He was amazing. I'm already putting Patrick Surtain, the second on that as a corner. He's already he's a 4-time Pro Bowler. He's a 3-time All Pro, Defensive Player of the Year. That alone stacks him up accolades wise with just about anybody else that I could have put there. And then my 5th defensive back is Chris Harris Jr. He is known as one of the best slots to have ever played. He was specific to that role. He was, a Pro Bowler, an All Pro, and because he was so good at it for the Broncos, I took the opportunity to put him in at slot. So there's 5, but then who's not in? Lewis Wright, who's who was an amazing player, a multiple-time
Hmm.
All-Pro. John Lynch, who really did his best work with the Bucks, but he was a 4-time Pro Bowler for the Broncos.
Hmm.
And an old AFL guy, Goose Gosselin, who was also a multiple All-Pro in the AFL. So they had at least eight guys to consider. But my five, Champ Bailey and Surtain at the corner. The safeties are Atwater and Dennis Smith, and then in the slot, Chris Harris Jr.
I love it. So I couldn't get Chris Harrison there because I only went with
Right.
4 defensive backs, but he was probably, I'd say, the emotional leader of that no-fly zone
Mhm.
defense that, famously dominated their way to a
Sure.
Super Bowl, basically made the quarterback position irrelevant. So we're aligned on the safeties and we're aligned on
Mm.
the corners. I'm with Champ Bailey and Patrick Surtain. I know it's hard to pick an active guy because
Yeah.
there's still so
Sure.
much to be
Sure.
said about the rest of their career. He's probably not even 30
No,
years
no,
old
he's
yet,
not. Yeah.
but I think he's done enough, especially the defensive player of the year that
Yeah.
sets him apart from, especially a defensive back. Like that's
Yeah.
very rare. So,
And when you think
you
about
know,
defensive backs, at least in this era, their best years are going to be their first 5 or 6. So, I mean, if you're talking about a corner, um, it's not going to it's going to drop off fast. So he's already doing
mhm,
in my opinion, all time great stuff in his first few years here.
yeah, until he eventually
Yeah.
moves to safety at some point, like
Yeah.
they all do. Champ Bailey, he obviously
Mm.
great player, but one thing I remember is he's part of that rare player for player trade
Yeah.
that you don't really
Yeah.
see that often, And I remember at the time he gets traded straight up for Clinton Portis, who
Who was amazing
was
too. Yeah.
incredible, and yeah, but I want to I think Denver probably
Oh,
won that
by
trade
far,
because of
and
how,
it would never be made now. I mean, there's no way you would trade a star. I don't think you would trade a star corner for a star running back in this era. The way the
no,
two positions are valued. I
yeah.
mean, I just can't imagine that happening.
Yeah, this trade was back in
Yeah,
2003, I
yeah,
think 2004. It's a completely different era where you're getting, 3 running backs taken in the top 10. Now
yeah,
you're lucky if you get
yeah.
one first round running
Exactly.
back in this era of the NFL. Who did you pick for their head coach? We're not doing
Right, not
specialists,
doing
right?
specialists.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
I don't know how you can not go with Shanahan. I mean, I know that Reeves took him to a bunch of Super Bowls, but it's got to be Shanahan. He's the one who won them. Yeah, that's my guy for their HC.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Slam dunk pick, I think,
yeah.
for me as well, even though I'm not a fan of him.
Well,
I think I'm
yeah,
obligated.
you're obligated to say that for your ratedom. You're obligated to say
Yeah.
that. Okay. I don't care for his
Exactly.
son.
But I love those teams. I mean, I again, as a Raiders
Yeah.
fan, I hate the Broncos, all this stuff, but I love those teams. They
Yes.
were that was the type of football that I enjoyed watching,
Hmm.
that ground and pound,
Yes.
strong running game, all
Hmm.
that stuff, great
Yeah.
defenses. So, all right. Next, we're doing the LA, San Diego, back to LA
Yes.
Chargers. I will be introducing my
Okay.
offense first. So at quarterback, I felt like this was pretty obvious. I saw some pushback,
Hmm.
but I went with
Yeah.
Dan Fouts over Drew
Yeah.
Brees.
Yeah.
Or sorry, not Drew Brees. Well, I guess
Yeah.
Drew Brees as well, but over Phillip Rivers, right? I
Can I
mean,
jump? Oh,
I
go ahead.
think
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, I mean, 2-time first team All Pro in that
Mhm.
era. That's a big freaking
Yes.
deal,
Yes.
right? He played from 73 to 87. You think about the
Hmm.
quarterbacks that were playing at that time. Uh, 82 Offensive Player of the Year, and a 6-time Pro Bowler. I know Pro Bowl's a little bit
Right.
diluted these days, but
Yeah.
back then it was
Right.
still a
Right.
big deal. So I feel like you're getting
Yeah.
ready to say
Well, see,
something
to me,
spicy.
this is the dividing line, and I don't want to be inflammatory, but this is the dividing line between casual and non-casual. The people who
Okay,
the
I like it.
people who th- who want to put Rivers over Fouts here. Um, Rivers's case is a numbers case. He's got a lot of counting stats, but when you compare
Hmm.
him against his peers versus Fouts against his peers, it's not close. Fouts was a 4-time All-Pro. Fouts finished second in MVP voting twice, and obviously he's a Hall of Famer. He was throwing for 4,000 when people weren't throwing for 3,000. He's not talked about nearly enough, and it's not even close. I mean, I would argue that Rivers belongs closer to John Hadle than he does to Fouts, and Hadle was also a great quarterback, 5-time Pro Bowl quarterback.
Hmm.
So I have Fouts as a no-brainer here, and then Rivers and Hadle, uh, they're fighting for who gets to hold the clipboard.
Yeah, Hall of
Mhm.
very good, I think, for Rivers, but he doesn't have the individual accolades, doesn't have the team accolades. So what
Yes,
case is there?
exactly.
And I think we've talked about his Hall of Fame case
I
ad
yeah, yeah,
nauseum.
yeah.
So I don't.
No, it's thin to me.
Yeah. All right. I will go with
Okay.
offensive
Okay.
line now. So at a little
Mhm.
thin here. So
Yeah.
similar to the Broncos. I yet to kind of dig deep. Left tackle, I went with Ernie Wright. So he played there from 60 to
Mhm.
67. AFL champ, all-star. Sid Gilman called him and Ron Mix the best tackles in pro football. I'm sure he's a little bit
Yeah, of course.
biased there. So again, right tackle, Ron Mix, 60 to 69, so another AFL guy. At the two guard positions, I went with Chris Dealman. So another
Mhm.
undrafted guy who goes on to become an all-pro. So, great story for him. Walt Sweeney, another AFL guy, 63 to 73. And then Don Masick, who was the center for that Air Coryell, offense with where Dan Fouts, like you said, was throwing for
Mhm.
4,000 yards a
Yeah.
clip. So
Well,
who you
yeah,
got
you're
for
right.
offensive line?
It was thin and it was hard. So we have Mix and Sweeney and Dealman the same. I went with
Hmm.
Russ Washington as an offensive tackle. He was a 5-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All Pro. I think he also played right tackle. So there's two right tackles there, but I just went with it anyway. And then center was interesting. The Chargers have in their history, they have 3 players who made the Pro Bowl as a center. Only 3. 2 of
Hmm.
them
Mm.
were guys that basically played the end of their careers there after being great somewhere else. Pouncey was one of them. But they had
Yeah.
one guy who was a Pro Bowler who played most of his career, if not all of his career, for the Chargers, and it was Nick Hardwick. So, so I went with Nick Hardwick, one-time Pro Bowler, Nick Hardwick at center.
Yeah, I mean, center is it's a tough
Yeah,
position. It gets the least amount of love.
yeah,
I mean, they're the only guys that touch the
yeah,
ball. I mean, other than the
right.
quarterback on
And
every snap.
you
But
gotta
they
be
get to,
so
you
good
know,
to be a center in the Hall of Fame. Like I think the floor for Hall of Fame center is like 5 All Pros.
yeah,
They don't give them
exactly.
any consideration at all.
Yeah, you think like guards are
Mm,
underrated. I mean,
so much
centers
so.
even worse. All right, for the skill
Mhm.
positions, so I went with one
Okay.
running back, two wide receivers, and two
Okay.
tight
Fair.
ends. So running back is very thin for this team. I mean, the obvious pick is LaDainian Tomlinson, the new LT, 3-time first team All Pro, NFL MVP, 20 plus touchdowns, one of the most incredibly exciting players
Yep.
to watch from this era of football. Another guy that I would hate watch consistently. Maybe he could have played quarterback at the NFL
He
level,
was
but
I think he was
it's
the
it's
crazy stat,
so
he I think he was 4 of 12 as a passer, and
yeah,
with or not 4 to 8 of
for like
12.
4
No, all 8
touchdowns.
were touchdowns. Yeah. No, 8 of 12, all 8 were touchdowns, and his passer rating is, like, in the 140s or something. It's insane.
Yeah. But it's so thin that Austin Eckler, I think, is the third all-time leading rusher for this team, and Ryan Matthews is
Yeah,
in the top 5. So
yeah.
not
Pretty thin at
strong.
running back, yeah.
Yeah. So for wide receiver, I went with Lance Allworth, who was the slam dunk
Yes,
pick, Hall of Famer,
yes.
great nickname. They call him
Bambi,
Bambi.
yes.
Doesn't sound like a compliment, but it absolutely is. Another AFL guy, played there for 8 years, and then I went with a more recent guy in
Mm,
Keenan Allen, who is, I would say, underrated in this era of
agree,
receivers.
agree,
Not the most
agree.
flashy guy. He's more of a possession guy. I remember watching him in college thinking this guy was going to be super explosive, like a deep threat type guy, but he ends up being more of a route
Mhm.
technician. And then the two tight ends have to fit these guys in. Antonio Gates, another Mount Rushmore
Yes.
type tight end, an incredible story. Former, D2 basketball player, I think, goes
Mhm.
undrafted, becomes a Hall of Fame tight end. He is I believe, the franchise leader in yards and touchdowns. And then my second tight end is
Yeah.
Kellen Winslow,
Senior,
senior, not junior.
yes.
Junior had his own set of problems, but Kellen Winslow, senior, who's one of the legendary tough guys of the game. There's that famous clip of him being like carried off
Yes,
the field.
yes.
In
Yep.
Miami, it's probably like 100 degrees with 100% humidity. But yeah, so that I went with a running back, two wide receivers, and
Yeah.
two tight
And
ends.
you know what? We have exactly the same exactly the same 5 in exactly the same configuration. Now, but
Okay,
what I did want to give some love to some other guys I considered. So, I wanted to
please.
put Lorenzo Neal as a blocking back so bad here, right? It was, he was the reason or one of the big reasons that LaDainian Tomlinson was who he was. Three-time All-Pro during that same period as LaDainian is doing his thing. In terms of wide receivers, I went with Keenan Allen. I went with Allworth, but I really, really, really looked at Charlie Joyner. Charlie Joyner retired in 1986 as the all-time leader in receiving yards and catches. So he's a Hall of Famer, right? So he every bit deserved to be there. But in the end, I came out exactly where you came out. LT, Winslow and Gates, Allworth, and Keenan Allen.
I love a fullback. I'm a big fan of the fullback.
Yes,
Bring him
yes.
back. And Neil, just like that era with the big neck roll, and he's
Oh
just
yeah,
he was a great
yeah.
player to
He
watch
was
too.
he. I mean, I don't know how or if they'll do it, but he was one of the very best at his position. That position being blocking fullback, right? I think I looked at this once. You look at who, because he played for a few different teams, and everywhere he went, 1,000-yard rusher went right behind it, right? He was clearly such a big part of that, and there's got to be a way to reward guys like that in the Hall of Fame, guys that don't touch it, but they are the very best at their position.
Yeah, there's maybe a
Yeah.
category of some kind to
Yeah,
get
they
these
shouldn't.
guys
I
in,
think
but
what it is, you shouldn't compare them, at least of that era. Don't compare them to running backs. Compare them to
yes.
linemen. I mean, really, when you look at him as a lineman, he was an excellent lineman.
Exactly. All right. On the defensive side of the ball, so this is so I went with a
Yep.
4-3.
Okay.
So at left defensive end, I went with Joey Bosa, who played there from 2016 to 23, 24, something like that. Really interesting case because I think at his best, he is one of the best players in the league. He just was
Yep.
never healthy, or very
Yep.
rarely healthy. So only played 3 full seasons there, but he reached 50 sacks in just 67 games. He only played 107 games over 9 years, but one of the best like pure
Sure.
pass rushers
Sure.
of the
Sure.
era. At defensive tackle, I went with Jamal Williams, who played there from 98 to 09. So 3-time All-Pro, 3-time Pro Bowler, like the classic run stuffing defensive lineman that you need in there. The other one, I went with Gary Johnson. So played from 75 to 84. First team All-Pro, second team All-Pro, and a Pro Bowler. He actually holds the single season sack record for the Chargers
from
with
the
17 and a
inside,
half.
which is pretty impressive.
Which is
Yeah.
ridiculous. I thought
Yeah.
when I saw that, I was like, that can't be right. I was like, I thought Khalil Mack had 17 the other day, or the other year, which he did, but obviously 17 and a half is more than 17.
There you go.
And then the other defensive end, I went with Leslie O'Neal, played there from 86 to 95. So 3-time second team All-Pro, Pro Bowler. They're pretty stacked, I think, on the defensive end and linebackers.
Yep.
It was hard to narrow it down. I'll finish out my front seven,
Okay.
then I'll hand it over to you. Outside linebacker, I went with Sean Phillips. I think he's kind of underrated for this era. Versatile guy, all 3 linebacker positions, played defensive end as well. Inside linebacker, one of the greatest players of all time. May he rest in peace. Not just greatest Charger, greatest
Yes.
players of all time, and Junior
Yes.
Seau. It's unfortunate he didn't get the ring that he was looking for with the Chargers. Just one of the most exciting
fun to
players,
watch.
someone
So
who played
fun to watch.
so much passion. I will admit, I also had his jersey as a kid.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean,
55 with the lightning bolts.
infectious.
Oh, you couldn't tell me nothing.
Infectious. I mean, he was so much just a complete joy to watch play football.
And he alone is responsible for so many Polynesian football players trying to follow in his footsteps. If you ask any of these guys, even the more like recent, younger guys, people like Puka Nakua or the running back from, I'm forgetting his name, the running back from the Steelers, all these guys, they'll name Junior Seau. He was my favorite player as a kid. And then the other linebacker, this was a little tough, but it was Sean Merriman, who had one of the best starts into a career, like in NFL history, just off the bat, one of the best players in football. Again, played with a level of intensity. I thought the lights out celebration that he would do he had a light switch. I thought that was a little corny.
You know what? I loved it. I loved it. I knew him as light. I almost had to look up his name. What was his real name? I mean,
yeah, right. Everybody's
Lights
calling him
Out,
Lights
yeah.
Out. I mean, the nickname
Yeah.
was great because it was like, it felt like an old school nickname, like, Dick Night Train Lane, Sean Lights Out Merriman, right? Like you could imagine some 50s style announcer, like with the microphone, like he's swallowing the microphone, like, Sean Lights Out Merriman, something like that. But he just didn't have a long career because of injury. I believe he had a steroid related a suspension as well. So that tainted it a bit, but that's my front seven.
Now we've got, maybe it speaks to how difficult it was to put the Chargers together. We've got a few disagreements here. So I have Gary Johnson in the middle. I have Leslie O'Neal on the edge. But my other
What
Okay, I
formation
went
did
four
you go?
three.
You
I
went
went
4-3?
4-3 on
Okay.
my edges are O'Neal and Fred Dean. Fred Dean was a multiple All Pro for the Chargers. He also was great for the Niners, but just for the Chargers, 3-time Pro Bowl, 2-time first team All Pro. He was amazing for the Chargers. In the center, I have Gary Johnson. I also have Lee Kelcher. So he was a 4-time All Pro. Again, another run stuffer in the
Mhm.
in the 70s 80s era. So those are my four: Dean, O'Neal, Kelcher, Johnson. So I don't have Bosa, and I don't have Lights Out either. He's an edge to me,
Okay.
and I didn't put him as one of my. I considered him for the O'Neal slot with Bosa with Merriman right there as well. So they're
Mhm.
honorable mentions for me. Sayao, of
Okay.
course, there's no way to not put him in. I've got kind of traditional linebackers in the other spots: Gary Plummer and Donnie Edwards, both longtime tackling machines for the Chargers. So those are my linebackers: Sayao in the middle, Plummer and Edwards as well.
Yeah. I had a hard time keeping Edwards off. There was another guy I was trying to fit in
Yeah.
Melvin Ingram, who I think didn't reach the
Hmm.
heights, I think, of some of the other guys, but he was there for a long time. I think the longer career that he had, because he went to go on to play for the
Right.
Dolphins and the Steelers, I think that adds to like his
Right.
overall
But not so
legacy, but
much the
not so
Chargers.
much as
Right.
a
Yeah.
Charger. So
Yeah.
this is a good example of some real
Yes.
depth where it
Yeah.
was hard to like parse
Sure.
through
Sure.
and
Sure.
decide like, who to get in there. I felt like on the defensive backfield, they were a
Yeah.
little thin. It seemed kind of a little too easy to fill these in. So I went with two cornerbacks, two safeties. So at safety, I went with Eric Weddle, free safety. Probably hit his peak with them, and then he would go on to play for the Ravens and the Rams. But he was a first team All Pro a couple times with the Chargers. And then I went with Rodney Harrison at strong safety. I think he's probably more known as a Patriot now, especially because he was the victim of the helmet catch. So whenever people
Right.
think of him,
Right.
they picture that. But he was one of the most fearsome players. Like him and Brian Dawkins, to me at least, my
Mhm.
era, were just absolute demons out there, and the guys that you did not want to mess with. They'd probably be ejected from every game that they played in this
Mhm.
era. So they were, more recent guys, 90s
Right.
and the 2000s. And then the two cornerbacks went with
Mhm.
Gil Bird, played there from 83 to 92, two-time Pro Bowler. I believe he's the all-time leader in
But for their
interceptions
franchise,
for the
yes.
franchise. Yeah, for the franchise, just to be clear. And then I went with Dick Harris, AFL guy, played there for 60 to 65, AFL champ, first team All-Pro. And one of the original guys on the Chargers franchise, which I think
Yeah,
matters a
sure.
little bit. You need some of that
Sure, sure, sure.
representation. But yeah, who did you have for your
Now
defensive backs?
we ran into the same problem. Now instead of I've got Weddle, but I put Derwin James on instead of Rodney Harrison. And
I
yeah,
struggled with
Derwin
that.
James, I mean, he
Nah.
is a
Yeah.
four-time All-Pro, one-time first team, three-time second team, five-time Pro Bowler. So I went with him instead of Harrison. So Weddle and James as safeties, Gilbert as the starting corner. And then this was a struggle as well. I mean, I looked at Dick Harris. I went with Speedy Duncan, who was also an AFL guy,
Mm,
three-time
okay.
second team All-Pro. I even looked at Quentin Jammer. Quentin Jammer didn't
Yeah. Maybe
yeah,
Cromartie,
Cromartie,
throw him
but
in there.
Jammer
Yeah.
was never a Pro Bowler, but he led the Chargers in games played in the position. So I was
Mhm.
reaching. I would go, wait a minute, no, but I ended up going Gilbert, Speedy Duncan as my corners.
It's a great
Yeah,
name for a
right.
cornerback, by the way. Like, it's almost like he was
Yeah,
born with a nickname. But I literally in my notes I have Derwin James question mark for
yeah,
strong
yeah, yeah.
safety. Give him like 2 more
Hmm.
years, I think, for me, and he's
Yeah,
taken over for Rodney. I mean, Rodney Harrison played there for 8
yeah,
years. Derwin James is
yeah,
almost there,
yeah.
but he's
Hmm.
up there. Like, he's in, maybe
Right.
top 5, in the
Hmm.
league right now. It's like defensively, so you
Yeah,
can throw him
sure,
in there.
sure.
But yeah, if we do this in
Yeah,
a couple years,
might be
he
more
might
obvious.
be
Yeah,
the
yeah.
name, but, all right, and then, for head coach, it was kind of a bit of a toss-up, I think, between Sid Gilman and Don Coryell. I went with
Okay,
Sid Gilman
okay.
because of he coached there for a
Hmm.
little bit longer, and he actually won
Yeah,
a
he
title,
won an AFL title.
which
Yeah,
matters. He won
yeah.
AFL title, not a Super Bowl, but I think if we're talking about like
Hmm.
neck and neck, give me the guy that was
Yeah.
a champion over. I know Coryell was like the
Yeah.
innovator,
Well, and the
all
thing
that
is,
stuff.
the
So
crazy thing is they're connected too. So it's not like you can't separate the innovations of both men because Coryell learned from Gilman. Now, I did go with Coryell, but Gilman is 100%
Okay.
legit. Coryell kind of took some of his Gilman teaching and took it to another place. So, but they're both legit. They're both Hall of Famers, I believe, as coaches. So,
Yes.
yeah, can't go
All
wrong
right.
there.
Now we are moving on to the Kansas City Chiefs, formerly the Dallas
Formerly the Dallas
Texans. So
Texans,
they also
yes.
moved they just moved just the one time. Uh, let's go with your offense on the
Well,
Chiefs.
you got to go quarterback. We're going Mahomes. Now, what the younger fans won't know is how good Len Dawson was. I mean, he was, well, obviously, until Mahomes was there, he was the unquestioned best quarterback
Mm-hmm.
in the franchise history. He was also a Super Bowl MVP. He was also a multiple All Pro. He was an amazing player, but now you got Mahomes, 2 league MVPs, 3 Super Bowl MVPs, 2 first team All Pros. And yeah,
The
the baby goat. No,
baby
no, no,
goat
no.
right now.
So Mahomes is the guy. On my offensive line, I've got uh
This is
yeah, they
deep.
they were
They're
pretty
deep
deep
offensive.
at like, and
It's
there's
hard.
no weaknesses here, I don't think at all. I mean, at tackle,
Mm-hmm.
I've got Willie Rofe, and he only played there 4 years, but he was an All Pro all 4 years that he played there. 2-time first team All Pro, 2-time second team All Pro in 4 seasons. So he's a tackle, and Jim Tyrer is the other tackle, and
Mm-hmm.
you don't know, a lot of fans don't know this name because he was involved in and I'm not sure how much we want to get into this, but he was involved in an off the field incident that took him completely
Mm.
out of consideration for Hall of Fame and everything else. People can look that up if they like.
No, tell me about
All
this.
right.
I did
So
not know about this because he's on
yeah,
my team.
yeah,
But yeah.
he, I'm not sure what I think CTA might have had something to do with it, but he unalived his wife and then himself after
Mm.
he retired. And he has never really been considered for Hall of Fame despite being a 6-time first team All Pro until not this past cycle, but the one before that. He made it as a finalist as a um, as a seniors candidate and didn't get in. So, I mean, that seems kind of cruel to me. You're going to not consider him all this time. You're going to consider him, make him a finalist, and then not put him in. But that's what happened. He was one of the best linemen to ever play for the team. But because of this incident, obviously, not just incident seems to not put enough weight on it, but because of this
Yeah.
incident,
Yeah.
he's not really, you don't hear much about him. But so
Interesting.
that's offensive tackles. Will Shields at guard, Hall of Famer. Ed Buddy at guard, well, amazing. And actually, I think his son played for the team as well. Also guard
Mm-hmm.
for the team as well. And then Creed Humphrey, I've already got him as the center, even though he's
Oh,
a 3-time
okay.
All Pro, 2-time first team All Pro, 4-time Pro Bowler. So I've already have him as the center. So my tackles, Tyrer and Rofe, my guards, Shields and Buddy, and then Creed Humphrey as my center.
All right. Yeah. Some of these recent guys I did not even consider, but
Yeah.
maybe I should have looked a
Yeah, I
little
mean, just
closer.
when you compare them to like
You know.
I look at it as kind of total accolades, and if they kind of match up, and I like dominance as well. So if you've already been a 3-time, in this case, a 3-time All Pro in 4 or 5 seasons, then you're a dominant player. You're probably one of the best players to play on that franchise. So I try to give the younger guys. I know I often get accused of leaning the other way, so I try
Yeah. No, I was
I
gonna
try to give the
say,
younger
right?
guys their due when they've earned it.
Yeah. So I mean, I agree. 4 out of the 5 we're aligned. I went with Jack
Yep.
Rudnay as
Mhm.
the center. You know, Super Bowl champ, 4-time All Pro, played
Yep.
144
Ooh,
consecutive games in an
impressive.
era, you know,
Yeah.
where you're not exactly dealing with the cutting edge of sports
Mhm.
medicine. Um, but Creed
Yeah.
Humphrey, I mean,
Yeah.
I can't argue that with the
Sure,
accolades,
sure,
right?
sure.
But I like it. I like it. All right,
All
tell me
right.
your skill
Now
guys.
this was hard. I mean, the Chiefs have had so many good running backs. So many good running backs.
Yes.
So here's
I think it goes hand in
yeah.
hand, right?
Yeah, there
Great
you go.
offensive
There you go.
lineman
There
where
you go.
where it's hard to parse
Yeah.
through. So you're
Yeah.
probably going to get
So
great running
I
backs.
went with one running back, and it wasn't
Just one.
Priest Holmes, and it wasn't Larry Johnson,
Okay.
and it wasn't Christian Okoye. I went with Jamal Charles, their all-time leading
Okay.
rusher, as the running back. And the reason being is not because they don't deserve it, but you can't leave the tight ends off. There's 2 tight ends that have
Mhm.
to be on this team. So with Kelsey and with Gonzalez, you got to go. In my opinion, you have to go 2 tight. Tyreek is a Hall of Famer, so he is one of
Mhm.
the wide receivers. And then Otis Taylor, was I think you mentioned, who was the wide receiver for Denver that you mentioned? It was the same. He was the same type of guy.
The
Yes,
Lionel
Lionel
Taylor,
Taylor.
I
Like
believe.
Otis
Yeah.
Taylor was the deep threat for those 60s and 70s teams that were so good. He was so good that he tied for second in MVP voting in 1971. That's how good so 1971, Alan Page won the MVP. He tied Roger Staubach for MVP, for second place in MVP in 1971. That's how good Otis Taylor was. So I've got two wide receivers, Tyreek and Taylor, two tight ends, Kelsey and Gonzalez. So that left me only one slot for the running back, and I went with the all-time leader in rushing for the Chiefs, Jamal Charles.
Okay. So I went a little funky with my formation, but hear
Okay.
me out. So I went with
Okay.
two running backs. Jamal Charles, like you said, incredible player. I think he's 5.5 yards per carry, just so explosive. And it's almost like a tragedy that he didn't get to play with a great quarterback. So he wasn't able to fully, reach his potential and win a Super Bowl type thing. The other running back I went with was Priest Holmes, undrafted guy.
So good. Oh my goodness.
There's a case for him to be, for that like 3-year run to be the most dominant player in NFL history.
Yeah.
Like he is like, we talked about OJ and the season that he had and the way that the offense leaned on him. Priest Holmes and that 3-year run.
If you want to, that
incredible.
3-year peak, that compares to Dickerson, 83, 84, 85. That compares to Earl Campbell, 78 through 80. Marshall Faulk, 99 through 2001. Priest is up there with all of those guys in terms of that. Terrell Davis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Jamal Lewis, that 3-year run, 3-4 year run with Baltimore.
Yes.
Yeah. And Jamal Lewis is the only reason that Priest Holmes ended up in KC because he got signed to Baltimore, but we already got Jamal Lewis. We don't need you. Just an incredible player. Larry Johnson, I want to throw him in there just to shout out. I know he's gone a little bit off the deep end since retirement, gone to some deep conspiracy stuff, but I wish him well. And then I went with 2 tight ends and one wide receiver.
That was the temptation.
So the reason I felt comfortable doing so is because give me Tony Gonzalez as my inline tight end, right? He's a more traditional, blocker, all that stuff. For a long time, he was a franchise leader in all the categories, but he could also, block his butt off. And then give me Travis Kelce playing out on the outside. That's where he operates most of the time anyway,
That's
right?
fair.
Either from the slot.
That's fair.
Throw him in there. And then Tyreek Hill there. I know there's been a lot of deep threats in the NFL. You mentioned Otis Taylor, Randy Moss, Deshaun Jackson, but Tyreek Hill with Patrick Mahomes, I don't think there's ever been a scary combo where
that's exactly what I was going to say. It's like the fear.
Yeah, it could be 3rd and 30 on the 1 yard line, on their own 1 yard line, and you're playing deep because you can't let this guy beat you. I think there was one play. It wasn't even a deep threat. But where it was against the Cowboys at the end of the first half, and they did that thing where they kind of threw a little dump off, and they formed like a dump off to Tyreek, and they formed like a human wall in front of him. And I don't think he scored the touchdown, but he came very close. And I was like, there's no one in NFL history that I've personally seen that would make this situation scary for the defense.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Where any other guy, it's fine. Some of these guys, Randy Moss, elite track speed, Deshaun Jackson, but I don't think I've seen anybody with the combination of world-class, elite, Olympic level track speed and that like rapid acceleration, the change of pace, all that stuff. Just one of the most unique guys like we've ever seen.
And it's funny that because as you were describing him, like the one word that kept going through our mind is fear. He was the wide receiver who could make, if you're rooting against that team, if your team's fear, put the fear of whatever in the defense. He was scary. So scary.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, with some of these other guys, you're like, okay, maybe if you paired Randy Moss with Mahomes, same idea where Mahomes can run around for 10 seconds and then heave it 60 yards downfield. Maybe it would have been the similar idea, maybe even more so because of the jump ball element. And I thought, okay, maybe how much of Tyreek's success is based on Mahomes and doing all that. And then he goes to Miami and plays with someone.
And he was still an All-Pro. He was an All-Pro a couple more times.
Exactly. Yeah. Very, very average quarterback that he's playing with, and he still was doing the same thing. So I was like, okay, this guy, like, he's just incredibly unique.
He's that
like
guy.
I said,
All right,
All
so
right. Give me your
my
defense.
defense.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we're on defense now.
Your
So
defense.
my front four, I've got, Derek Thomas technically is a linebacker, but I've got him playing edge in this defense. So
Okay. 4-3 here
no,
as
I've
well.
got another funky formation. So I'm going
Okay, please.
four up front. Chris Jones and Buck Buchanan. I'm not sure if any team has a better 1-2 punch on the inside than those two. I mean, Chris Jones is a future Hall of Famer. Buck Buchanan is a Hall of Famer. I've got Neil Smith on the other edge, with apologies to Tamba Ali. So my front four is Derek Thomas, and Neil Smith on the edges, Chris Jones and Buck Buchanan up the middle. And then at
Okay. All
linebacker,
right.
I'm going with only two guys because I needed five in the secondary again. So my linebackers are Willie Lanier, the first African-American middle linebacker of all time. Came into the league at a time where it wasn't believed that blacks could be the quarterback of the defense like that. Lanier was the first. And then Bobby Bell. Bobby Bell is a Hall of Famer, 6-time first-team All-Pro. He was an outside linebacker at the time where they weren't edges, so he had to defend. So he was a kind of a, well, the Raiders have a similar player to this one that we'll be talking about as well, but he got sacks and he covered the pass as well. I believe he was also their long snapper. He was that good of an athlete that, he was a pass rusher. He was a defender in space. He was a long snapper. He was a tough guy. He was everything. So those are my two linebackers, Bobby Bell and Willie Lanier.
Was Willie Lanier's nickname the Honey Bear? I read this somewhere. I was like,
you know what? I don't know that it wasn't.
Confirm
I
it.
don't know that it wasn't, but it didn't. It doesn't, and it doesn't sound like the way he played either. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like an ironic nickname.
It doesn't
or
stick with
you
me.
know. Okay. All right. So I went with a 3-4. So my two defensive ends, Tamba Ali and Jerry Mays. Tamba Ali, you mentioned him, more recent guy. Maybe doesn't get the accolades because he wasn't part of the great AFL teams or the recent era. And then Jerry Mays, another AFL guy, played there from 61 to 70, won a Super Bowl. And then Chris Jones, I think, was the slam dunk pick as my defensive tackle, even though he plays all over the place. You probably could have put him at DN if you wanted to. You could put him at nose. Just such a pain in my ass as a Raiders fan. I always hated seeing that guy. And then for my linebackers, Derek Thomas, may rest in peace. That was a slam dunk pick. And then Willie Lanier and Bobby Bell as well. And then I went with Derek Johnson, who I think maybe gets overlooked.
I looked at him.
Because of that same thing. He was in that era where they were really bad, and then when they were okay, and then he missed out on the full Mahomes, Andy Reid experience of the deep Super Bowl runs. But just like a tackling machine, classic middle linebacker that you wanted in there.
And then, my secondary.
Your DBs.
So I have at safety, I've got Eric Berry, he was so very good, was never able to stay healthy, but when he did, 3-time first-team All-Pro, 5-time Pro Bowler. They have another safety from the AFL days named Johnny Robinson, who was a 6-time first-team All-Pro. He's also a Hall of Famer, so he's a safety of mine. And then I've got a third safety, Deron Cherry, who has 50 interceptions.
Okay.
He's a 5-time All-Pro, 3-time first team, 2-time second team. And then on the corner, I've got Emmett Thomas, who's a Hall of Famer from the AFL days. And then Albert Lewis, who was also a 2-time first team All-Pro. So my corners, Emmett Thomas, Albert Lewis, Barry, Robinson, and Cherry playing safety.
Yeah. So I had 4 defensive backs, so I agreed with all of you, all of your picks. Barry, Cherry, Thomas, and Lewis. So not a super strong defensive backfield, I would say, compared to some of the other.
I mean,
compared
there are
to
2 Hall of Famers there, and Eric Berry is a Hall of Fame adjacent to me. So so it's not terrible. It's not terrible.
I wonder if he'll get in. If they take into consideration the cancer diagnosis. It wasn't like an injury. It wasn't like off the field thing.
Well,
like at his
I mean,
peak,
that's the thing.
I wonder.
He would have to get the Sayers exemption, right? He'd have to get because at his peak, he was every bit that guy. But did he play long enough? Football's dangerous. That's part of what the thing is, right? You got to play long enough to, so I can see it either way. He's right on the line for me. Hall of Fame adjacent.
Yeah. And then the head
be Andy
coach.
Reid. Got to be Andy Reid.
No consideration for Hank Stram?
I mean, just because, not that Hank Stram wasn't great because he was. And he was their first coach, I believe, and he was the one who led him through all of that. But
He was
Yeah,
from Dallas.
yeah.
He coached them
But
in Dallas. So.
Andy Reid, given what he's done in this era with this competition with 32 teams,
Mhm.
it's unbelievable. Got to be him. Got to be him.
Yeah. The only argument I would say is Stram didn't have Mahomes, but he had Len Dawson.
He had
So
Len Dawson.
he had
Yeah,
a Hall of
yeah,
Famer of his own. I think he had Len Dawson
yeah,
longer than Reid has currently been with
yeah.
Mahomes. So
I mean, he
in
has a
terms of like
case. I mean,
you know,
I shouldn't have been.
yeah.
I shouldn't have been as dismissive as that. I mean, he has a legit case. Like, Hank Stram, I believe, is a Hall of Fame coach as well. So he's
For
legit.
sure. Two-time champ, I believe, AFL
Yep,
champ, and
yeah,
then the
Super
Super
Bowl
Bowl champ.
4 and then
So,
twice AFL. Yep.
yep. So
Yeah,
same
there you
number
go.
of rings
There you
right
go.
now so far. All righty.
Here you
Now
go. Here you go.
the Oakland, Los Angeles, back to Oakland, now in Las Vegas Raiders. I will be going with my offense first. Quarterback, Ken
Okay.
Stabler, I think is the more I read about the start that he had to his career, the more incredible the end of it was. Like the fact that he was drafted in 68, he spends 2 years on like the taxi squad, injured reserve. We've talked about him being the second quarterback that they actually took in that class. I think it was Eldridge Dickey that went in the first round, but because of the politics and then racial politics, all that stuff, you would have thought Al Davis, being kind of the trailblazer that he was, he would have gone with Dickey, but I guess it may be a little too early for him to feel comfortable making that decision. I know he's taken stands against, staying in like non-integrated hotels or playing in places like things like that. So
he was. I mean,
I know he definitely
for the NFL, he was a trailblazer in that regard, right? I mean, he definitely brought the league forward.
Yeah. As far as Ken Stabler, great nickname, Snake, not the Snake, just Snake. To make sure, I'll make sure to get that right. 2-time All-Pro, won the MVP in 73, 70s All-Decade team. So, one of the best quarterbacks of that era. Don't look at his raw stats because unless you know the context, you'll be like, why is this guy a Hall of Famer? Right. Same thing with Joe Namath. I think especially kids these days, they'll be like, wait, he threw for more interceptions than touchdowns, but don't worry about that.
Now,
let's focus on.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you, how much consideration did Daryl LaMonica get?
The thing is, I feel like Stabler is the clear number one. And then there's like the second tier of guys where you have like LaMonica, you got Plunkett because of the team success. Right. Maybe throw Rich Gannon in there because of the MVP and reaching the Super Bowl. And then in terms of like raw stats, counting stuff, Derek Carr, he's like he'd be in that third tier. So, there was not a super strong quarterback tradition, I would say, compared to some other teams like that. I mean, I get not someone like a few other teams, maybe Dallas or San Francisco, but I would say you can throw them in the mix of a pretty elite group. And the thing is I'm completely biased, but it was so hard to do this. Every single position.
You love them all.
Is like 4 deep.
because you know them, and you know the backstories, and you know all the stuff, right?
Yeah, I do, but it's also like I feel like the fact that the Raiders have been bad for 20 plus years now, I think it does such a disservice to the rest of the eras that they had, where for decades they literally had just Hall of Famers at every level, every position, guys that would stay there for 10, 15 years and be excellent and win Super Bowls. Even in the 90s where they weren't great, they still had some of those guys. But from the 60s to 1990,
they were good for
25
years. I mean, like relevant and one of the best teams in the league for 25 to 30 years before they, obviously, the last 25 had been rough. But prior to that, they were
exactly.
They were so good.
Yeah. All right. So my offensive line, this was tough, but I would say probably the best offensive line in the division. We'll start with the left side. Art Shell, Gene Upshaw, both played in the AFL into the NFL. Both won multiple Super Bowls with the team. These guys were so good, they were kind of almost thought of as one unit player because one unit, right? Both went to small schools that I think don't even play football anymore. So this is another, tip of the cap to Al Davis and his scouting department. And I think it gave him an advantage that he wasn't scared to draft guys from, black players
HBCUs,
from HBCUs or small schools, things like that. He left no stone unturned. And back then it gave him an advantage. For my my right tackle, this was a little tough. I went with Henry Lawrence. It was tough between him and Lincoln Kennedy. I think Lincoln Kennedy's probably peak was better, but Lawrence played there for 12 years, 3 Super Bowls. You're the starter. I mean, I kind of got to give him the nod. My other guard, I cheated a little bit. I know Steve Wisniewski is a left guard, but it's all the same to me. I put him at right guard, someone that I know you're passionate about, his Hall of Fame case. And then at center, the probably greatest Raider of all time, Mr. Raider himself, Jim Otto, one of the toughest SOBs to ever put on a uniform, 00, which is awesome. I don't think they allow that number anymore. But yeah, he didn't miss a single game over 15
That's
years.
the best auto stat there is right there. That he played 15 years for the team, 14 games every year, 210 games, 210 starts. Mr. Raider. I love it. I love it.
There's this clip that was circulating recently with Chris Long on his podcast where he was talking about, he just gave like this laundry list of injuries that Jim Otto played with. And, you know, I'm sure he knew him, you know, from when his dad was playing. He's probably hanging around the Raiders still. So I'm sure he got to hear some of these stories firsthand. But yeah, that is my Raider offensive
And I've got 4 of the 5. I've got Lincoln Kennedy at that tackle instead of the player you chose. But the other 4 are right there. Shell, Upshaw, Otto, Wisniewski. Wisniewski, 8-time All-Pro, and I got to plug him again. 8-time All-Pro, all-decade for the 90s, and still not in the Hall of Fame. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. And one of the things, I mean, you
imagine being an 8-time All-Pro and not even... Go ahead.
That's crazy. It's crazy. But here's the thing, and we'll get into this. Here's the thing that I love about the Raiders franchise specifically. You can make a Raiders Mount Rushmore and pick no guys who handle the ball. You can do without a single skill position, without a quarterback, without a running back, without a wide receiver, without a tight end. That might be the correct Raiders Mount Rushmore, and I just love the fact that there's so many of their great players acknowledged by the fans as great players are not the flashy players. I love it.
Yeah, I think if you go to any Raiders game, I think you'll be shocked at how many offensive line jerseys you'll see, Upshaw and Shell and even Wisniewski growing up. And again, on Wisniewski, imagine being an 8-time All-Pro and not even getting to play your natural position.
because there's a better player in front of you.
That's just bonkers. For my
I
skill
want to
guys,
see what you did here. What did you do here?
Yeah, this was hard too. But I went with one running back. I think it's clear in terms of overall talent, dominance, peak, all that stuff. It's Marcus Allen, you know, all-time leading rusher, NFL MVP, Super Bowl MVP, first player in NFL history to reach the 10,000 rushing yard and 5,000 receiving yard mark. I know that's probably becoming a little more common these days.
The
but
10,000 actually, the 10,000 is going to be the harder part going forward.
True, exactly. There you go. It might be like, you know, it might be reversed at some point with some of these guys. And then I went with 3 wide receivers and 1 tight end. The tight end position was very hard. I couldn't. Yeah, it was hard to leave him off. But I went with Dave Casper as my tight end. I very nearly went with Ted Hendricks, who was up there as well. Sorry, not Ted Hendricks. Todd Christensen. Thank you. I'm getting my names mixed up. Todd Christensen. And then I gave like a half a second consideration to the peak of Darren Waller. Just like, maybe don't need a second tight end, but at his peak,
you're a Raiders fan, all right.
Yeah, right. And then a wide receiver. This is a murderer's row. I think there's a few franchises that could match up, but very few. I went with Tim Brown, all-time team leader in receptions and yards. I think he's 5th all-time in receiving yards with almost 15,000. He's got 14,700. And then Fred Biletnikoff, who's probably underrated at this point. I know people don't like the stick 'em stuff, but hey, it is what it was. It is what it is. And he's so good, they named the best wide receiver award in college football after him. And then Cliff Branch was my 3rd wide receiver. We talked about deep threats, ultimate deep threat, 3-time Super Bowl champ, 3-time All-Pro. It's a tragedy that he had to wait, or his family had to wait for him to pass, for him to get into the Hall of Fame. He should have been in there well before. But I was like, can I fit Bo Jackson in there? No. Some of these other guys I wanted to fit in there, I just couldn't. Actually, me and James on Wednesday, we talked about, or Tuesday, we talked about Warren Wells.
Yeah,
as one of
yeah,
the
yeah.
all-time great AFL guys that had his career derailed. But Jerry Rice
Rice,
could have
yeah.
been
I
on
mean,
there,
Rice could have made some
you
other
know?
teams with his Raiders performance. If
Yeah,
he did that on another franchise, he might have been
exactly.
able. He might have been able to make it.
Yeah, yeah. So who are your skill guys?
Exactly the same. Exactly the
All
same.
right.
So, I mean, Christensen was a honorable mention for me. Mark Van Egan. I mean, people don't give guys like that enough credit. I think a lot of fans would have tried to put Bo on this team and maybe found a way to put Bo on this team. But
Mhm.
in terms of production, he just doesn't. I mean, I think Bo was 15th all time on Raiders rushing, something like that, right?
Mhm.
Mark Van Egan was second. Marcus Allen was the obvious first, and then you couldn't not put all three of those receivers on there. It had to be Tim Brown and Biletnikoff and Cliff Bryant. So, yep, all five are the same.
Mhm. Yeah, throw in like Mervin Fernandez in there.
Yeah.
There's so many guys. You just wanted to fit them in there, but you just couldn't do it. All right. For the defense, so I went with
Okay.
a 4-3
Yeah.
this time around. I mean, it
Yeah.
could be a 3-4 either way. My defensive ends, I went with Howie Long. I think was the no brainer.
Yeah.
Or sorry, I went with a 3-4. My
Okay.
apologies.
Okay.
3-4. Howie Long as my defensive end, 81 to 93, three-time All-Pro, almost 100 sacks. They didn't keep stats for tackles for loss, but I know from my research, my reading, he was great at that as well. He's kind of Max Crosby before Max Crosby. There's a couple guys like that. My nose tackle, I went with Chester
Yeah.
McLaughlin, three-time All-Pro in the mid-90s. So this was kind of the lull for the Raiders before the slight uptick. I almost went with Darrell Russell, but I think McLaughlin's peak was a little bit better, and then Russell had his own, suspension issues and injury issues, things like that. My other defensive end, this was tough. I almost went with Max Crosby as my right defensive end, but not quite yet. I'll give him like 2 years. He's up there. I went with Greg Townsend, who played there for 13 years, 7 double-digit sack seasons. I know a lot of them was playing opposite
Right.
of Howie Long.
Right.
So I'm sure that helped. But he was still a two-time All-Pro, Super Bowl champ, 9 sacks. So we talked about 100 maybe
Yep.
being that cutoff for the Hall of Fame. I know he hasn't reached, he hasn't been in those conversations, but maybe he should be. And then for my linebackers, the Raiders have a great linebacker tradition. So this was hard to parse through. For my outside linebackers, I went with Khalil Mack. I know he only played there for 4 years, but that peak that he had, being all pro in 2 positions in the same year, I don't think like that's unprecedented. He only has 40 sacks, but it's 40 sacks in 4 seasons. He's gone on to, great things in other places. And then Ted Hendricks, this is one of the best trades in Raider history. Basically gave away some trash to acquire him. And he was an all-time great before he came to Oakland, which is, cool. And then for middle linebackers, this was tough, but I went with Rod Martin, may he rest in peace, passed away recently, 2-time All-Pro, 2-time Super Bowl champ. And then Dan Connors, an AFL legend, 3-time All-Pro. I almost went with Matt Millen here. I kind of was like, I don't know. Kirk Morrison was great too for a little bit, but who was your front seven?
Well, you know what?
Front
We've
six?
got you've got a lot of Raiders knowledge, so we got a lot of disagreement here. I went
That's great.
on
I
the
love
edge, of course, Howie Long. You can't not have Howie Long. First of all, I went with a 4-3. So my edges are Howie Long and Max Crosby. Max Crosby is a 2-time All-Pro already, 5-time Pro Bowler. I think his peak is pretty high as compared to a Khalil or someone else.
You know what's funny is I think as the younger guy, I was like, I can't be biased towards the younger guys. And then you got some years on me.
But
you're like,
but then again, I'm gonna flip Otis Sistrunk in as a as a defensive tackle. So Otis Sistrunk and
from the University of Mars,
exactly.
right?
And McLaughlin is my other. So McLaughlin and Sistrunk in the center or in the middle, and then Howie Long and Max Crosby off the edges. And then my linebackers, I have Hendricks, of course. You got to have Hendricks. I have Rod. Man, I'm still torn. I'm like, I've got Millen on my team as well. But then I was going back and forth between Rod Martin and Phil Villapiano. And I ended up with Filipiano. So he's my but my 3 guys, with apologies to Rod Martin, Villapiano, Millen, and Hendricks, are my 3 linebackers.
It was Khalil Mack just not there.
That's for me. That was it. And the challenge with him is he might suffer in all of these teams, right? Because like a
Mhm.
like a guy like Deion Sanders, he very well you could legit obviously he's one of the best players of all time, but I'm
Mhm.
not sure whose all-time team he makes. He makes the Falcons just because they were so bad, right? Because they don't have any
Yeah.
depth. But I don't, but he was a short time. I mean, he only played for the Niners for one season. He played for
Mhm.
the Cowboys for 5. They've got a lot of secondary. I mean, so it'll be funny. It'll be interesting to see when we get there. But I think Khalil's the same way
Yeah.
that he played a short time for a few, like for the Bears, for the Chargers, for the Raiders, and may struggle to make any one of those teams. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, he didn't make our
yeah,
Chargers
yeah.
team, didn't make Raiders team.
They
Bears, I
got
mean, they have
so
so many
many,
great defensive players,
from way back. So
you know? Yeah.
so he made half a
I
team.
think yeah, exactly. At one point, there was a real conversation between who would you rather have, Khalil Mack or Aaron Donald. I think Aaron Donald
Yes,
eventually won that
he ended
argument,
he ended
pretty
that. Yes.
convincingly. But the fact that it was even a discussion makes you think, okay,
Yeah,
this guy was
yeah,
pretty damn good.
yeah.
All right, and then
Secondary.
on my defensive
Oh
backs,
my God.
oh my
So
God,
I mean,
this was impossible,
murderers row.
impossible.
Yeah, your phrase murderers row. It was like they had 10 guys.
Yeah, like you could make three
Yeah,
teams
yeah,
here of all Hall of Fame type guys, all pro
yeah.
type guys. My corners, I went with Willie Brown,
Oh,
6-time All
old
Pro
man
with the
Willie.
Raiders, Super Bowl champ. Old
Yep,
man Willie, behind the man behind one of the great Super Bowl calls where he picks off
yep,
Fran Tarkenton for the
yep.
pick six. Original like number 24 number. I know the Raiders they don't retire numbers, but if they would, number
Yeah,
24 would be the
yeah,
one, not just for Willie Brown, but for the other
yeah,
guys that have worn it since. Incredible player. And he was also a
yeah,
former Denver Bronco, and he was
yeah,
great on the
yeah.
Broncos. And this is probably Al Davis's best trade because he trades a throwaway defensive lineman in the 3rd round pick for a guy that played till his late 30s at an
At
all pro
corner.
level.
Corner.
At corner, exactly. The other corner, this was so hard, but I went with I almost went with Lester Hayes. I know Charles Woodson gets a shout. I went with Nnamdi
Ooh,
Asomugha,
yeah, yeah.
who
His peak,
at his peak, like we
his
talked
peak.
about, it is up there with anybody else. He has no interceptions basically because nobody would throw the ball against him. He was the absolute definition of shut
Yes, he
down
was.
corner, and especially the era that he played in, just a terrible era for the
Yeah.
team where they were constantly winning 3, 4, 5 games. And he was head and shoulders, the
Yeah.
best player there. Miscast in other
Yeah.
places, but one of the best, I don't even hesitate to say one of the best man-to-man
He
corners
was.
in NFL
I mean,
history.
he was so good for the Raiders, and like you said, miscast other places. He just fell off a cliff. I guess I don't know what it was, the system or what it was, but he left the Raiders and it was over for him. Absolutely over for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And then my safeties, so I cheated a little bit here, but I put George Atkinson at safety, member of the Soul Patrol, one of the hardest hitting players in league history, one of the franchise leaders in interceptions to this day. And then I slotted Charles Woodson in at free safety
Cheating.
because
That's not cheating. He played
yeah,
corner
right? It's
and
not.
wait till you see what I did.
Yeah, but there's some guys I had to leave off. I mean, Jack Tatum, I had to leave him off, unfortunately. And then Lester Hayes was another guy. So again, you could have gone with like 8 different guys. So
yes. So my
let me hear
corners,
yours.
Willie Brown, of course. I did put Lester Hayes in that second corner. So,
Okay.
but I mean, so that's not Asamoah, not Mike Haynes, who was amazing there for the Raiders. Charles Woodson, you could argue, is an honorable mention corner. He played corner. He left the Raiders, came back, played safety for the Raiders. So I have Woodson as one of my safeties, and I have Jack Tatum as the other safety. So I have Atkinson as an honorable mention. So my safeties are Woodson and Tatum, and then my corners are Willie Brown and Lester Hayes. And you've got 3 or 4 amazing players that could be an all-time secondary by themselves left off because they're that good.
Yeah. I probably should have went with Jack Tatum as the other safety. I was trying to stay a little bit true to the positions, but
no, Jack Tatum.
All right, and then head coach
Gotta
John
be
Madden, I think, is the slam dunk.
Yeah.
10 years, no losing season. I
Yeah.
think his worst season was like 9
Yeah.
and 7. Super Bowl champ,
Hall
just
of
an
Famer.
incredible legacy. All
Yeah.
that good stuff. And coached there from 69 to 78. Unfortunately, couldn't coach much longer than that. He had his fear of flying and all those things. So But yeah,
Yes.
incredible legacy for
Yes.
this team. So before we kicked off, we talked
who
about
is the best.
let's try to rank these guys.
Well, so to me, it's clear that, well, from my point of view, Raiders and Chiefs are separated themselves from the Broncos and Chargers in terms of their all-time teams. They are they're deeper. Like there's very little reaching on either one of those teams for the Raiders and for the Raiders and for the Chiefs. Having to kind of reach and plug some stuff in for the Chargers and for the Broncos. So there's a clear 1-2. There's a clear 3-4. Now the question is who's the 1 and who's the 2. I mean, it's hard because both teams have some overflow in some positions, right?
Yes.
So
absolutely.
that secondary overflow in the secondary for the Raiders is unbelievable. The running backs for the Chiefs, that overflow there is unbelievable. If you went group by group, I
was going to say maybe we do it like semi-scientifically,
so
group by group.
If you do group by group, I think the Chiefs clearly have the better quarterback room than the Raiders. I think the Raiders clearly have the better offensive line room. So that's the skill positions. I mean, that's tough.
I'd say wide receiver, Raiders, tight ends, Chiefs, and then running backs. I think just the sheer number of guys,
Chiefs,
I would give it to the Chiefs as well. I mean, I think Marcus Allen is probably at the top of that heap, but it's like 1, 2 through 4, or 2 through 5
are all Chiefs.
Probably Chiefs. Yeah.
So
exactly,
you're right.
Exactly.
Offense, you're already at a dead heat, basically. When you've done it that way. Defensive line. Well, let's go to secondary. To me is easy. That's Raiders in the secondary. That's hard. I mean, because at the top, to me, like the top 2, like Bell and Lanier are better, or as good or better than what the Raiders have, but there's more depth perhaps for the Raiders in that linebacker.
Okay, and if you throw Derek Thomas in there too, like that's even more
but
win, I think, for the Chiefs.
And then I had one on there that you didn't have that really, to me, like as far as the defensive line, Buck Buchanan was the number 1 pick overall in the AFL in 1963. He was a 4-time All-Pro, 8-time. I mean, him and Chris Jones together on an all-time team with the Edges. I mean, I think we're splitting hairs. I mean, I literally could flip a coin and be like, I'm okay with however it lands. It's that close because even when you go room by room, it's like 3-3, something like or group by group. It's like 3-3.
Yeah.
So you know what? Yeah,
this was a lot of fun.
I loved it.
This was so much fun. I can't wait for the next one. We'll have to pick a division. Maybe I'll let you. I picked the AFC West. So I'll let you pick the next division. But you'll catch our next show on May 28th. It's going to be just after Memorial Day weekend. So hopefully you'll be back from whatever trip you're on, and you'll be seated and watching us on our live show. Mack, where can folks hear from you and see more of your
Football
content?
Fanstorian on all the places, on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook, TikTok, all of it.
Awesome. And make sure to follow 4040 Vision Sports, again, on all the major platforms. We're sharing our football elevated content everywhere there as well, just to make sure you guys know it's a little bit a separate entity, but it's kind of a marriage of our combined interests. So we appreciate you guys. Thank you guys. Make sure you hit that follow, like, and subscribe button wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Mack.
Thank you.